Hi, Cindy. How are you? Um, we're going to wait here for a few minutes. Hi, Sarah. I had dogs, so sometimes you have to tend to them right away if you don't want to see any accidents. So I had to check things out. So I apologize and thank you for your patience.
Hello.
Hi, how are you, Khalil? I'm sorry about that, but I have dogs, so I had to attend and see what's going on.
Is
So
everything all right?
everything's great. Everything's great because
Awesome.
I seen on there for a second it said unavailable. I'm like, no, that's not the case. I said I just come live anytime I have technical difficulties. What I learned is just go live, and then my guest is usually right there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was even messaging you. I was trying to get in, but for some reason, Substack said that I wasn't invited, or the other thing was the link was broken. Did you see my message?
No, because I had to attend to the dogs, so I'm like, let me tend to them first. That was the first priority, and then I was going to
Of
come in because
course.
I'm a reliable person, so it has to be a reason that I'm not here. Okay.
Definitely, definitely.
Otherwise,
But
I will contact you immediately.
you said you had to attend to the door. What was that?
Dogs, my
Oh,
dog.
to the dogs. Your dogs. Oh, how are they doing? Is everything all right? Are they safe and
Yeah,
sound?
yeah. That's why I had to make sure before I started
All
because
right.
then I would be
Yes.
interrupted, and I would
Mm-hmm.
not want that. So
Awesome.
it is what it is, right? We have to keep
It
things
is what it's
moving,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. Instead of panicking, breathe.
Breathe.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Absolutely. And that's where we are today. So,
Yes.
um, we are here talking to Khalil Jezini, right? All right, in the flesh. All right, I am truly honored that
Thanks
you're
for having
here.
me.
Yes, yes, we've been having conversations over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and
Yes.
developed this genuine connection between you and I. And I'm truly honored for that because, as you know, I am international. Okay. So that's what we have to do to position ourselves in the world today, as you know, as
Exactly.
entrepreneurs. Okay. To
Okay.
me, it's about getting up early, doing what needs to be done so that we can focus our attention on other things. Okay. So
So,
you are very well at introducing. So why don't you introduce yourself? It's better that way. You tell the story the way you want it to be told.
awesome. First of all, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Like you said, from the first moment we connect, there was a genuine connection, based on your experience, the shared values, the raw conversation with whenever for the audience out there, whenever I met Margaret, I like she is the real deal, like no BS, honest truth, she speaks like she's authentic in everything she's doing. So I said, all right, that's what's up. And from my point of view and in my perspective, I'm an entrepreneur since I can remember. And the reason I say that because I was I started early like practicing sports, at the age of 8, I started like skateboarding, playing soccer, and I tell everyone that's when my journey as an entrepreneur began. Because from my point of view, being an entrepreneur and being an athlete and being a human being, they have the same challenge in a different framework, if you understand. So by becoming an entrepreneur and being an athlete at such a young age, I started developing a lot of my skills, like, uh, grit, risk mitigation, planning, because you have teamwork and all of those skills. So that's a little bit about myself. I'm born in Brazil. born and raised in Brazil. Fun fact, in the Amazon rainforest, like in the middle of an island surrounded by green, by forests. It's just a joke, but that's the capital of the Amazon rainforest. The Brazilian Amazon rainforest is called Manaus, and I was born and raised there. When I was 15 years old, I went to United States, more specifically to Texas, to attend high school as an exchange student. Was an amazing experience. My nickname was Brazil, so everyone like, "Hey, Brazil, what's up?" So that was my name back then. I have a major in business administration. Did have a master's in business administration as well. I opened my first business at 17 years old, was a motorcycle dealership with my brother, who's also here on the live stream. Hey, Khalil, and we learned a lot about how running business and so on and on. And one day was around 2013. I remember he called me into our office and he said, "Hey, you know what? Let's go to the internet." And I was like, "The internet? Well, that sounds fun, let's go." And it was 2013. And since then, that's what I've been doing.
Did you guys take a copy out of the Twinkle? What's those guys? The Twinkle, who's
The
involved with the?
Winklevoss. Winklevoss.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah. Did you take
Yeah.
that out of their rule book or whatever?
You know what? Me and my brother, we like a year apart from each other. So even growing up, we were very tied together and bond. And whenever the opportunity to open the motorcycle dealership, this was back in 2007. You know, uh, we said, all right, let's do it. So it was a great journey so far. And obviously, later on in life, we kind of went separate ways. He has his ventures, he has his businesses, and I have mine. But when we're together, we learn a lot with each other. He's great with numbers. I'm great with business. I'm great with people. And we always complimented each other. So it was a great journey.
That's amazing because I always heard about this sibling rivalry. Even though I have two brothers, I was the middle child. Okay, you always have this sibling rivalry, and a lot of times it stems from the parents. You know,
Mhm,
wanting you to do this or do that, and sometimes they use the kids against each other to compete. You know,
mhm.
and so that's amazing that you have that type of relationship with your brother. That's amazing.
Yes, yes, yes. And until this day, we use each other as a sounding board, as advices, as we're always FaceTime each other, sharing challenge, sharing what we found out, what we learned, and so on and on. So yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. It's very important, as we know, to have a supportive network. And
Mhm.
if that can come from family, that's even better. Yes, to have that
Exactly.
because a lot of people don't have that. So, what would you recommend for people like that?
What I recommend, it's like there's no such a thing as an individual sport. Let me use the sports as a metaphor. So whenever we see like tennis or any other sports that you might think is individual, but in the backstage, those athletes that are able to achieve high performance level, they are surrounded by amazing people. I even get goosebumps, by saying that. So it's the same thing in life. And in my perspective, reach out to people like the real entrepreneur, the real business persons, they are always open to pass on the handle. Let's put it that way. So I have reached out to people. Obviously, not everybody's going to answer in the way that we want it because they're busy with their agendas and so on and on. But some of them, they're going to open the door for you. And I have this great experience, like don't be shy, don't be afraid, if they are open. And there's a lot of also different perspective. First, do your homework, understand what do you need and from who, because sometimes that person is going to give you the honest feedback like I received before. So that's a great lesson that I can pass on, like, hey Khalil, sorry brother, like I'm not into your market. Like, I cannot help you. Like, literally, I don't understand about your market. I don't understand about tech. I understand about this, So I'm truly sorry, but I cannot help you, based on the information that you're giving me, you know, I, I pass, because I'm not going to be able to help you. So do your homework, find the people that have affinity with what you're looking for, as an advisor, as a board member, as a sounding board, as a mentor, and whatever, and ask those people, ask them out. And obviously, keep in mind that out of 100 people that you might message, 50 might reply back, and you might, meet with 3 or 5 of them, So it's nothing personal. Just keep in mind, it's a game of numbers, and not everyone have the time and effort to also help. It's not because they don't want, it's because, if you say like, hey, all right, I want to, Bill Gates should be my mentor. All right, but the whole world wants the same thing. You know what I mean? So nothing personal, try to find your place and the right persons to help you.
Yeah, so what you were referring to is boundaries. And it's very necessary
Exactly.
as an entrepreneur to have boundaries.
Exactly.
Yes. So talk to us about how you got to build this international social media um, conglomerate.
Awesome. That's a great journey, And fun fact and long story short is Kornerz was born 10 years ago as a tech company here in Brazil. And it was a startup competition around a few universities here in Brazil. So this venture capital said, you know what? MIT has a lot of patents, and here in Brazil, we don't have a lot. Why? Because the students, they rather go to a master degree or a doctor degree where they can receive grants to support their ideas instead of, receiving funding to develop that idea into a business. So anyway, long story short, we applied to that. This was back in 2015, and we won the competition. It was a 3 months, competition, and we developed like a matchmaking platform, where creators would join and brands that were looking to partnership with those creators. And this was like the creator economy wasn't even near what it is today. I had a hard time. We used to call them bloggers and opinion leaders, and we had a hard time explaining to brands. Imagine this, Margaret. We had a hard time explaining to brands why they needed to partnership with creators on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and so on. Substack wasn't even near what it is today. So, anyways, long story short, we developed this platform, where we had this thousands and thousands of creators on one side and brands looking to partnership with them. The business grew like hugely. We work with major brands all over the globe, from France to Germany, here in Brazil, enterprises. We receive a lot of funding, and understanding the back end of social media, and all the complaints from creators, brands to the users. I said, you know what? It's time for a new kind of social net, you know, and that dream kept me alive with me for a long time, and and during that time, around 2018 to 2019, I was trying to spin off the business, but it demanded so much from me because we had like 30 people at the time, a lot of contracts, a lot of responsibilities with those clients that I was I was not being able to spin off the business. And boom, that's when lucky strike, because when COVID hit, everything kind of was put on hold. And I said, you know what? That's the chance I was looking for. So we decided to pivot the business, and Kornerz was based on my pain. Sorry, I said, you know what? I love philosophy, for example. I'm like reading a book here about Freud or whatever, Plato. I want to talk. I want to talk to people about this. And I said, I would look around and like, my friends are not into it. But I believe there's somewhere, some in this vastly world that is doing the same thing, is reading a philosophy book and is looking around and say, you know what? I would love to talk about this with someone. And what I found out is all these platforms right now, they are amazing. They fulfilled an amazing business. Like, for example, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, they did an amazing job for small businesses, for example, to reach out their audience, to advertise their products. So I said, all right, so now it's time for a real kind of social network, focus on the user, where I can jump in and literally like end up in a room with other people that are looking for the same interests as me, to talk about business, to talk about well-being, to talk about economy, and so on and on. So that's where the idea came from their desire to connect with other people from around the globe.
We can see that from just within Substack itself. The people are looking for connection, and people are looking for um, to be informed and to have this community that you're talking
Exactly.
about.
Exactly.
So, as we know, the world is going to continue to change on a daily basis. Okay, and we always look at our competitors and see what they're doing and what we can do differently. Because we
Exactly.
have to, because it's a crowded world out there. And as we know, the federal government is going to continue to downsize, and all the people like myself who are getting eliminated from these positions. Where do we go? How do we position ourselves in this crowded market, in this noisy world?
Exactly.
Okay, and how can you continue to raise the bar with this conglomerate that you're building?
Exactly.
Can you share your wisdom with us?
Yes, yes. And you know what? I learned that the greatest products and the greatest things that we do in life, for example, whenever I was an athlete, for example, and the reason I believe I was state champion, I won a bunch of like awards, as a professional athlete. And the reason I believe I was able to achieve such level is because I love what I do. I wasn't doing it for fame, for money. I just love for the sake of it. That feeling, of being standing up on a board and doing all those tricks. I even got goosebumps. And right now, it's the same thing with Kornerz as a social network, because I mentioned like, hey, it started with my pain. It's something that I truly desire that can benefit other people, right? Like, I want to connect those people. I want to connect the world. It's not a matter of what's right or what's wrong, or I'm gonna do this better than Substack. I'm gonna do this better than Instagram. No, we're just different. We're just delivering a different value proposition. I'm going to also use, for example, Apple and other computer companies. Like, have you ever tried to do this? Have you ever tried to compare or explaining to someone what is an iPhone or an iPad or a MacBook? You you just say like it's just better, like it's just a better experience. It's better than a Dell. It's better than a Vial. No, it's just different, you know. And from and all of them feel their role, you know. Few people they rather go with Windows. A few people rather go with Apple, and that's fine. And I believe, and that's the trick, Margaret, from my point of view, user centric. You know, you are focused on what the user is looking for. A lot of people like complain, for example, oh, why Apple is doing that? There's a reason behind it because they understand their ICP or their persona, their customers, you know, and they are focusing on solving their pains, you know? That's it. And I believe that's the same thing we're doing at Corners. Like, hey, it's focused on the user, it's focused on the value proposition. And from the feedbacks that we're getting, you know, we're just taking our first baby steps as a social network. And I say, like, hey, this is a David against Goliath because, you know, what we're trying to achieve, it's huge in the way of, you know, bringing people in, delivering their value proposition. There's a lot of challenge, you know, product wise, acquisition channels, cost of acquisition per user, all those different strategies, you know. But the feedbacks that we are having, I saw Margaret grow adults crying on corners, you know, like based on their experience. Because like last week, for example, we connected with Fonzie from Malaysia. The other week we connected with a guy from Norway. And so like and those people and like why and I asked them, you know, because we are such in an early stage, we're not doing like huge pushes on market or having millions of dollars on marketing expenses. And I asked them like generally, like, hey, why'd you download this? You know, what made you come to Corners? And why and more like why do you keep coming back? You know? And they were like, I found what I was looking for, you know. I just wanted to connect with other people, you know, and that's what we're doing, you know. We're really focused on what the user wants, you know. Like don't get me wrong, but it's not that we don't care, but like what the market is doing, this AI rush, and like it's great, you know. Like, hey, Substack, for example, is doing lives and it's doing lives in a great way. Sometimes we thought like, hey, let's develop a kind of live inside of Corners. The way I said, like, no, let's focus on what we're doing good, like connecting people on small video calls, you know, those cozy nooks. And let's keep the lives for Substack. They're doing an amazing job over there, you know. There's no much improvement that we can do, you know. So let's focus on doing our thing over here, you know. So that's what's up.
Finding your secret sauce and doing that is what we each need to do, and worry less about what Mary is doing over there and
Exactly.
Sue doing over there. Okay?
Exactly.
Exactly. Like Carl said, keep it simple. We keep things simple, we keep moving forward, one step
Exactly.
at a time. I love
That's it.
that. So that's how we position ourselves, is use our secret sauce and keep moving forward. Because as we know, as we continue to do things, we continue to perfect it over time. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I love what you're doing there. And so you answered the question as far as what about forward projections? I mean, we can't see into the future, okay, obviously, but we need to have projections, and we cannot do everything alone. So, how did Rich come into play? Your partner?
We met through Corners. Can you imagine
Oh,
that?
okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
One day I was reaching out to people on LinkedIn, for example, and messaging like a lot of people that I thought have affinity with what I was doing at Corners. And I would message them like, hey, check this out. You know, I'm building this app, this new kind of social network, does so and so. Please try it out and give me feedback. so I can improve the platform. And Reach was one of those people that he joined. He joined once, he joined twice, and I started getting in touch with him to get feedbacks from him, and we just connected. Those feedbacks turned into meetings, those meetings turned into collaborations, and those collaborations turned into a business partnership. One day I got to him and said, you know what, we definitely need someone like with your experience, with your background. You know, what do you say? Like, would you like to join us? We draft a vesting agreement where you're gonna have stake on the business and so on and on. We're early stage, so we don't have the resources to pay you in cash, but we're gonna pay you in equity. So what do you say? And right on the spot, he said, "That's amazing. I want to be part of this legacy." So all right, let's build this together. And he rolled up his sleeves, and that's history. The rest is history. Yeah,
That's amazing. Now, how long you guys been working together now?
for about 9 months.
Awesome. Awesome. That is great. So, what do you recommend to entrepreneurs just starting out?
First of all, find what you love, like, literally, because being an entrepreneur is no difference than, I'm going to use the sports as metaphor as well, because I believe it's very simple to everyone to understand. In sports, for example, let's use basketball as it. Everyone wants to make into NBA. But why just a few of them make it? And the reason why is, first, the amount of effort you have to put in is just out of this world. You got to practice your three shots like thousands of times. And even though you're practicing thousands of times, on the championship day, you're going to miss a few of them. You know, you're going to lose some, you're going to win others. And being an entrepreneur, you got to be able to, it's cliche to say that, but if you fall 10, rise up 11 times. And the same thing as being an entrepreneur. I remember one day, this was 2017. I was talking to one of my investors and I said, "Hey, Carlos, I must be stupid, because my life as an entrepreneur is a roller coaster. Sometimes I said, yes, I made it. The next day, I'm like, I need to look up for a job, like I'm screwed. And, like, I don't, I don't have like, when is this going to end?" And you know what he told me? Like, buckle up, brother. You know, that's the journey of an entrepreneur. And it's the same thing with an athlete. Like I said, like, I won this championship. That doesn't mean I'm gonna win the NBA championship the next year, and so on and on. So it's a relentless search of the outcome. So also, it's cliche to say, but it's about the journey. You either love what you do, or you're gonna be miserable every day. So, I also saw that in sports, the people and the athletes that they were able to achieve the top performance level. You know what? They were not doing for them. They were doing for fame. They were doing for the money. They were doing for the wrong reasons. Because if you're doing for all those reasons, on my perspective, and I talk that by experience, you're not going to be able to endure all the challenge, because being an entrepreneur, achieving a high performance level in whatever you do, the amount of challenges, the pain you're going to go through is like out of this world. You're going to get hurt. You're going to break a leg. You're going to, like, as an athlete, you're going to do all of this. And I went through that. For example, I tore a ligament on my ankle, and I was like, "Oh my god, like what I'm gonna do?" And we started thinking about all of these things, like, "Am I gonna get back to the same level? How long is gonna take?" So the emotional intelligence as well is something that stands out from those high achieving performers. So it's the same thing in business. Sometimes you might be at the top, sometimes you might not be at the top, and that's okay. You got to be able to have patience, because that's one other thing. That's from my perspective, a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of businesses, they die of suicide. And what do I mean by suicide? People are impatient. They want to build a multi-million dollar business overnight. And sometimes trying to rush, that's when you kill yourself, because hey, you don't really have the money to kind of be in that spot. Sometimes your product is not ready yet. So I saw like founders, for example, pouring millions of dollars into marketing, and they had like a poor product. So those are the kind of examples that you got to understand. And last but not least, just to wrap up this thought, is you got to plan, you got to do, you got to chat, and you got to act. Being an entrepreneur is revisiting this wheel every freaking day. How can I be today better than I was yesterday? Period. You only need to be 1% better than you were yesterday. And on the long term, that's from my perspective how you're going to succeed.
Absolutely. And it's not easy at all.
Not easy at all.
What's the alternative? Working for someone else? At least if you're working for yourself, everything that you build, everything that you accomplish, all your accomplishments and contributions, you take center stage versus someone else taking all the glory. That's the advantage of working for yourself, I would say. Would you say, are there any other advantages?
Uh, I go back to the same thing, because for example, let's use Tim Cook as an example. He is what I call an entrepreneur. He is an entrepreneur, but he's not the founder of Apple. But he started from the bottom and made his way up. Obviously, he loves what he do. He loves Apple. And if you have that kind of environment, if you love what you do, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an employee or whatever, like just love what you do. And I believe that's the core value that I can give anyone business wise. Make sense? What do you say, Morgan? And from your experience, what do you say about all this uh, insights that I shared?
This is great stuff because you are a successful entrepreneur. So I I'm learning from you. Okay,
Oh, thank
so
you.
absolutely, I'm in awe of you. So things that you come back to is mission, vision, and core values. Okay, this speaks volumes of your character and who you are. And then you talk about why people keep coming back. These are the reasons I feel. Are we in agreement or what?
Yes, definitely. And it's all about that. Put your value proposition first. And whatever you do, if it's a hot dog stand, a bakery, or a tech company, or whatever, you're going to be successful. And I believe that's what success is all about, is delivering value and doing good to other people.
Well, they say also that most businesses fail within the first 3 years. So planning ahead of time is very important. That's including your business plan should have all of these things in it. your projections, um, your staffing, whatever you think you're going to be spending as far as your overhead and your profit and all of these things. So we need to take all of these things in consideration, as well as our strengths, opportunities, and threats, and as well as our weaknesses.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, did you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yes, yes. And I believe this planning, for example, and I'm going to use an example. Whenever I became a wakeboarder, I fell in love with this particular trick, you know, was like a backflip with a cork 360. And I said, oh my God, this is a masterpiece of a trick, you know. I want to be able to do it one day. So I'll set this goal. One day I'm going to do it. And obviously, I learned to break down the trick. All right. So, first of all, I need to learn how to jump straight up. After I learned how to jump straight up, I need to learn how to do backflip. All right. Second step. After I learned how to do a backflip, I need to learn how to do a 180. After I learn how to do a 180, I need to learn how to do a 360. And then you combine everything together. So it's the same thing in business, you know? And for example, on Kornerz social network, when we started developing the business, we started with nothing. We didn't went on developing the app or whatever, you know. What we did was, all right, let's let's understand, like, if I envision for the business is the same thing other people envision. So we went on and we started interviewing people from all over the world, you know, like, hey, what do you think about your current experience on those platforms? Like, what do you like? What do you dislike? What can't you find on those platforms? Like, what are you looking for? You know, and with all those information, we bundle it in together and we say, all right, so now let's do the proof of concept. Again, no lines of code developed. You know, we started bringing those people in and delivering them the experience. So the proof of concept we did out of Zoom. We started inviting people in. It's like, hey Margaret, we're gonna meet tomorrow 7 p.m. on this link on Zoom. We're gonna talk about philosophy. All right, all right. And we would invite Rich. Same thing, same prompt. And when those people joined, they didn't know each other. So we kind of gave the pitch, said, all right, guys, you are here because you all like, you know, and share the interest in for philosophy. So we're gonna create these breakout rooms, chat. You know, so we create those breakout rooms, and after those sessions, we would iterate with feedbacks. So, hey, how was your experience? And people said, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" You know, I didn't know Margaret, but getting to know her, and you know, we shared the same love for philosophy, so we engaged. That was amazing. You know, I want more of this, and from that we evolved to what we call the minimum valuable value proposition. So we kind of developed the first versions of the app. You know, had like one feature was very ugly, very buggy, or whatever, and we introduced to those people. They started, you know, having their first interaction with it, and we always evolve from that, you know. Remember that PDCA that I did: plan, do, chat, act. So we're kind of, you know, going on that on forever, you know. When are we going to stop improving? Never, you know. We are always focused on the user feedback and improving the product and building that. So that's what's planning all about. And going back to wrap up that thought, remember the trick? I said, hey, I'm going to do that trick. When? I have no clue, you know, only time will tell. But the only certainty that I have is I'm going to do it one day or another, you know. Might take 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, you know, but consistently, I'm going to do it. And one day happened one thing. I was trying that trick and I sprained my ankle. And I went back to the drawing board and I said, hmm, why did I sprain my ankle? And I figured that I wasn't ready to try that trick yet. I still had few steps before to master, my backflip wasn't really unlocked the way it should be, and it's the same thing as business. For example, on Corners, I tell my co-founders, like, hey, the only thing that I promise you is we're gonna make it. Like, I don't know how. A lot of things are gonna go wrong, and this and that. But the only thing that I promise you, we're gonna make it, because the only thing that I can promise you, my co-founders, my team, is me as Khalil. I'm not gonna give up. All the rest, I don't know. When are we gonna have 1 million users? I don't know. Might take a year, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, that's not up to me, because there's a lot of other things that we need to. There's funding involved, there's cash flow, there's product, there's thousands of different things, and only when all those things kind of lock together, it's like putting a blank puzzle, so that's for me what planning is. You got to have your North Star. What do I want to build? What do I want to achieve? But keep in mind that it's not going to happen the way that you're planning to, So just iterate, have patience. Like I said, whenever we try to rush into things, that's when things break. That's when, like I mentioned, that's when I sprained my ankle, because I was trying to take a shortcut to a trick that I wasn't ready to do it yet. And it's the same thing in business. You got to plan, you got to understand, all right, so to reach 1 million users, what do I need to do? Am I ready? Is my product ready? Do I have the right infrastructure? Do I have the acquisition channels? If all those answer checks, then you're on the right path. If not, you got to understand on your planning, what do you need to improve? So that's planning for me. You got to know your forecast and use data as well, because building a business, it's like putting a blank puzzle together. You know, there's no right and wrong
Absolutely.
answer. Even the mentors, even, you can show your planning to other people and say, like, hey, what do I do? And I'm going to tell you with 100% of certainty, if you show your planning to 10 people out of 10, all of one of them are going to give you different insights and different things to do, so it's up to you to understand what your business need and what you got to do as an entrepreneur to thrive, so keep everything noted, have your milestones, and just be patient.
But how do you really know? Like you said, you can talk to 10 different people and get 10 different answers, and you got this plan, but there's still uncertainty. So how do you decide how to move and when to move?
uh that's when, what I call the outlier comes in. The coach on the sideline, he can tell you, like, hey, Margaret, shoot more like this, move the ball like this, move. But it's only up to you to see what really needs to be done, if you put in too much pressure, if and I tell the same thing. Like, for example, I talk to my investors, and back in the days, whatever they said, I would do it. I was like, oh my God, those guys, they know it all, and everything. And they do. But when those opinions are about my business, I know more than they do, because it's not with a monthly report and, a 1 hour meeting every month that they're going to be able to understand everything, you know? that is happening in a business. So listen, digest everything, but it's up to me, it's up to the entrepreneur where what really needs to be done. Sometimes their opinion, their suggestions might make sense. Sometimes it doesn't. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they don't have all the inputs that I have, as a CEO, as a founder, So it's tough because we gotta follow our instincts. We gotta be open to be wrong as well. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of times that I go back to my investors, to my stakeholders, to my team, to my users, and say, sorry, I was wrong. you know Let me take a step back. I'm gonna fix it. We're gonna find another way. We just hit a dead end. It's totally fine. I was wrong. Let me shift in reverse and let me turn around. Totally fine. So
Well, since we know that business is so risky, do you suggest, I would feel more comfortable having a plan B, maybe a plan C if the business venture or business or whatever goes south,
mm,
don't work out the way we plan.
that it's my opinion. And I take that as well from my professional ages. From my perspective, like th- there's no the, the only way to achieve the high performance level is like all in. Whenever I sprained my ankle, I didn't think, you know what, I'm going to start playing chess. You know what, I'm going to start playing golf. Michael Jordan, Michael Phelps, all Steve Jobs, all of these amazing human beings, they didn't have a plan B. Failure was not an option for them, you know? And I got goosebumps saying that because that's the thing that I bring. Like, hey, there's no plan B. It's this or this. One way I'm gonna make it. Like I said, like don't rush into things. You gotta be patient. You gotta have, you know, emotional intelligence to deal with that anxiety, and all those thoughts that they will come. Tough times they will arise, good and bad times and so on and on. But saying everyone has their reality. But from my perspective and on your question is my mindset, my status quo from everything I learned is like I'm all in. There's no plan B. All right. So what am I gonna do if Kornerz doesn't work out? There there's no such thing, of not working out. You know what I mean? So, but again,
Absolutely.
we go back. Don't be stubborn. What I mean is like, hey, to be where we are today, we did a lot of pivots, trying different things. A few things worked out, other things didn't work out. So trying the same thing the same way, expecting different results is insanity. So you have your goal, you have your plan, go for it. Go for it, and you're gonna achieve sooner or later. And my status quo is like, I'm all in. There's no plan B. And for me, that's how we're able to achieve greatness. That's those it's cliche to say, but like, hey, a mother carrying her son and a rock kind of falls into her son. You know that there's no plan B over there. She can't call anyone for help. It's up to her to save her child. And that's when human beings do amazing things. For example, remember that movie 127 hours, the guy who got stuck in Arizona with a rock, and at the end of the day he cut his whole arm because it was all in for him. He didn't have a plan B. So the only reason he was able to endure such a pain was like, there's no plan B, brother. I need to cut my arm. You know, they're the only way to survive. And in business, it's the same thing. Because if you're like, all right, you know what? If this thing doesn't work out, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. You're already putting on your mindset, like, you know, anyways, my perspective. What do you say? Makes sense, Margaret? What do you think about this?
Absolutely. It's always better to come from a position of strength. Always flip the script, always reframe your situation, okay? Because if you think of negativity, you've already lost, okay? You've already lost the war and the battle, really, okay? So the other thing is I want to talk to you about is, when you're in business, when you're down here, nobody knows you. But as you start to climb, then you start to see, people hating on you and a lot of people are not going to be happy to see where you are. A lot of successful people end up seeing that you realize how small your circle really is. Okay. Your
Hmm.
inner circle and your outer circle as well. You want to talk about that?
Yes, and again, it comes from authenticity. You know, we talked about this before, and you know, we're you know this probably better than me, but we can see bullshit in people's eyes. You know, like, hey,
Yeah.
the moment you meet someone and that person starts talking and she's bullshitting you, you kind of boom, you catch her on the spot, you know. And from my reason and from my point of view, that's when people get lost, you know. If you're not authentic, you're gonna be like a dog chasing your own tail, you know. Like if you're in this kind of environment, you're gonna act this way. If you're in that kind of environment, you're gonna act that way. And also the environment is going to influence on you. You know, like, hey, if somebody today talks smack about my hair, I'm all right because I'm wearing this hair because I love it the way it is, you know, not because I want to perform or I want to look good for other people, you know. So I believe that's the best way to not let the outside influence you in a bad way and change you from who you are, you know?
I couldn't agree more. And, as far as, censorship, I'm going to speak what my truth and speak what I feel, regardless of who don't like it. That's why I stopped worrying about numbers, because every time I, get done, somebody's feelings been hurt. Oh, I want to quit. Okay. Can somebody ask me, okay, can you delete my membership? Well, how did you join in the first place? Okay.
Mhm,
Figure that out. You can figure out how to delete yourself. Next.
mhm,
I don't
yeah,
have time for that. Okay.
exactly,
That's people insecurity. Okay. When you grow up, you can come back and join us. Maybe, maybe not. Whatever.
exactly,
So we have to become thick skinned. We can't please everybody. And I'm not trying. I'm not trying that no more. People pleasing is over. Okay.
exactly.
Right?
Amazing. Love that as well.
Yeah. Call it out. Call it like it is. Okay. Keep it real. Because at the end of the day, people don't give a damn and people don't even remember you anyway. What they remember is how you made them feel, like you said. And that's what keeps people coming back. Okay.
Exactly,
Not that other stuff. Okay.
exactly.
So,
Amazing.
do you do you have any other advice or suggestions for anyone?
Uh, you mean like regarding to entrepreneurs, to
Well, it's really crowded out there. We all trying to figure out what our offerings are to the world, and far as our skill set and gifts. And that's the thing. We need to understand what those things are, those gifts are, so we can give
Mhm,
the best value to the people we serve. And some people may not even realize that yet.
exactly. The best advice that I can give anyone, you know, and please don't get me wrong. This is not about religion. This is not about faith. This is not about ideology, because from my point of view, this started back in 2015. And one day I had this epiphany that I said, you know what, Khalil, you're not here to compete with anyone. You received a gift. And fun fact, you didn't ask for it, but you received the gift of life. You are alive in this world. You could have been born anywhere else in this planet, but you were born in the Amazon rainforest, out of Jefferson and Anna Maria. So, based on everything that you lived so far, I want you to ask yourself a simple question. You don't need to answer, just reflect on it, just sleep on it. Based on all the opportunities that the world is giving you, are you giving your best? Are you being the best version that you could ever be? Margaret, that changed my life forever. And
Mhm.
from that epiphany, I said, you know what? I'm gonna be my best version, I'm gonna be proud of myself. And obviously, on that journey, I went on and I said, you know what? I grew up in a Christian household, you know. I used to go to church and whatever, But at that time, during that epiphany, I said, I never read the Bible. So I'm talking about a movie that I only watched the trailer. You know what I mean? And I said, you know
Mhm.
what? I'm going to read the Bible. And again, I said, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I started reading from Genesis to Apocalypse. Took like around 2 years, but I read it and I said, oh my God, this is amazing. And again, because from my perspective, like I said, it's not about faith, it's not about ideology, it's not about what you believe or you disbelieve. The Bible, it's about a history. It's a history book. And whenever I finish reading the Bible, I say, you know what? Now I'm gonna read the Quran. I want to know what's up with them as well, Like, hey, I'm curious. Like, yeah. So I went on and read the Quran. From the Quran, I read the Gita, which is the book, for and Buddhism, yoga, and so on and on. And Margaret, from my perspective, they are all history books. And what those people found out is they were amazing leaders. We can talk about Muhammad, Jesus, Joseph, David, and so on and on. What those people have in common, they were great leaders. So anyway, and long story short is the three things that they are my mantra, and I believe that's the best advice I can give to anyone. First, Matthew chapter 22, verse 39. Love your neighbor like you love yourself. Like, hey, help everyone and do good just for the sake of it, like you would do for yourself, do for others. You don't expect anything for yourself. So why would you expect, like, why would I help you only if you can help me back? So, anyways, that's Matthew chapter 22, verse 39 for me. Second one, Luke chapter 23, verse 34. Father, forgive them for what not know what they do, you know? Like, hey, forgive your brothers and sisters. This chapter and this verse tells about the story. Jesus was being crucified. He looked up, he looked to all those people on the audience and said, Father, forgive them, forgive them. They know not what they're doing. That's fine. And that's the most beautiful thing that we can do is forgive others. And last but not least, John chapter 30, verse John chapter 10 verse 30. I and Father are one. We all in this game, we're all in this world together. Again, we're not here to compete with each other. We are here to thrive together. It's the same thing in nature. If you take a comma out of the equation, the whole world wouldn't exist. If you take oxygen, the whole world would exist. If you take Margaret out of the equation, the world would not be the same as well because there's no Margaret in it. You know what I mean? So that's the beauty of it. And we are in here together, you know. I and Father are one. The universe is not conspiring against you. The universe is actually with you, you know. So use it well.
Well, I grew up in a religious home, and religion was used to manipulate and control. Okay. But I do believe in the principles. I am a spiritual person, and I'm with you.
Amen.
Amen. So, does anybody have any questions at all before we conclude our session today? This has been so informative. I want to thank you so much for your friendship and for bringing me in yesterday, and for you coming in today to talk about your story. Thank you so much. And this is not the end. This is just the beginning for both of us.
Exactly. And thank you as well, you know, thank you for being such an amazing human being. And I tell you, like, you changed my life in so many ways, you know, because since we first connect and all the exchange and all the experience, all the insights and all the conversations that we have, like I mentioned, there's no Khalil, you know, before Margaret, you know, like as soon as we met, you changed my life forever because I was able to acquire all the knowledge, all the experience, and all the authenticity that you brought into me, you know? So right now, there's only Khalil after Margaret. You know what I mean? So thank you for that as well. Thank you for being such an amazing human being. And thank you for, you know, letting me be part of this journey with you.
Thank you. Likewise. You take care. All right.
You
Bye.
too. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.